Welcome to another episode of the All Pop No Culture podcast. I'm your host again this week, Kevin. We get into The Last of Us this week because obviously it is my own personal addiction and I had to share it with the world. But before that, we take a little time. I talk about Hacks Season 2. I talk about the Callisto Protocol again real quick. I talk about an old horror flick that I watched called Tammy and the T-Rex, although calling it a horror flick is probably a stretch. In the middle, Andrew and I start talking about The Conjuring 2, and Andy finally shows up in the episode. So he joins in on that conversation, which takes us on some ridiculous tangents. We talk about, sleep paralysis, which somehow leads to ancient aliens, which somehow leads to dragons. So if you want to see something that just doesn't make any sense at all, by all means, stick to the middle of this episode. We go off for a while before we circle back and finish with The Last of Us, which, again, my personal addiction. So I hope you guys are watching it. If you haven't watched it, definitely do. As for this show, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, add it to your playlists, share it with your friends, all the good stuff. Set up notifications, and enjoy the show. For this week, did you watch anything besides The Conjuring?
The only thing I did was I actually started to rewatch Neon Genesis Evangelion again, and I have to say, without being too spoilery, like, it was always a bit of a cyclical show to begin with. There is an ending, but like there is some definite revolutions going on. And I gotta say, this is my third go round, and I'm already like, it's hitting different, and I that's the beauty of, I think, of TV shows. Like, when you rewatch them, you catch shit, or it's just a different experience because you're in a different place in your life. So it's still a masterpiece, and I think this time around I'll be able to speak more intelligently to it than ever. And one more thing I'll also say is that, like, even though I typically hate English dubs, this time around I don't hate it as much. So I do think that for the CB series on Netflix, you can watch the English dub. It's fine. It's
okay,
fine.
And it's on Netflix.
Yes.
You'll have to send me the watch order, like the right, like when things came out and which ones to look for, so I don't miss one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I know
were
they movies or were they series?
both.
Or both?
So basically, yeah. So basically, the series it was like a 26 episode series that's on Netflix right now. Then there's a movie called End of Evangelion, and that movie came out in 97, and it basically replaces episodes 25 and 26, because 25 and 26 happen in the heads of the protagonists, and the movie is like what happens outside. And I'm just like, it's more than you asked for, but I enjoy talking about this. Like, the fans were pissed off at 25 and 26. They're like, this is some bullshit. Like, you gave us this show, and now you're just gonna give us like some psychobabble shit. So the creator is like, fine, okay, y'all want some shit? You get some shit. And it's a merciless bloodbath of a film. And then 4 more films came out. 2007, 2009, 2012, and then 2021. We waited so long for the last movie, but that last film was just chef's kiss. So
awesome.
Going back to that first, so the Netflix series, you should be good for the first 26 episodes.
Nice. Okay.
Thank you for letting me do that.
Yeah, let's check that out. Before we get to The Conjuring, I'll go through this stuff I've watched real quick because it was quick. I think half of it's stuff I talked about last week. I finished the game that I was talking about last week, the Callisto Protocol.
Mm-hmm.
Funny enough, I got really frustrated by it. It's a game that relies on difficulty more than story, and I'm more of a story-based gamer. So I got stuck at one point, and I was like, you know what? Fuck this. And I was like, I'm done. I put out a little rant on Twitter about it, and a guy that used to do another podcast that I watched a lot, and have traded message with regularly. His name's
Nice.
Dan. He replied, and he's like, yeah, blah blah blah. He's like, you should really finish it. And I was like, fuck. Okay, so like I took 2 days off, went back, and of course finished the part I was stuck at, like the first try. I was like,
Amazing.
God damn it. So went through, finished the story. Definitely liked it more than I thought I would.
Huh.
At that point, because like it had lost me. It wasn't as good as some other games. Like there's a game from the same developer or same creator. He's a different studio now, called Dead Space, and that remake comes out this week. And that's probably Dead Space is probably the best like pure horror video game I've ever played.
Hmm.
Um, and so that was still the better game, but this one had its moments for sure. And good cast. I don't think I talked about it last week, but the two main characters that you really care about are Josh Duhamel and Karen Fukuhara from The Boys.
Mm-hmm.
And I love her. Like I adore her. So that was cool. Had a decent ending. Definitely left room for a sequel. I know that I think it got kind of took some hits on the reviews when it first came out. The studio was hoping for 5 million copies to be sold, and I think they only sold like 2.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see if it gets a sequel or not. I'm not sure. It'll probably depend on, content released after the fact, if there's any DLCs or anything like that that expand on it. Downloadable content.
Thank
I
you.
saw your face.
I'm like, what is that?
So yeah, we'll have to see. We'll have to see. I kind of hope it gets a sequel. But another game that kind of went the same way was called. Oh shit! Now I forgot what it was called. But there was one. It was a zombie game. Your main character's on a motorcycle. I liked the game too, but and it really felt like there was a lot of issues with it, but I liked it. Um, and it never got the sequel that it probably should have. I think if sometimes I look at a game or a movie, if it's good enough to be entertaining, then you kind of want to see the sequel take the things that were right and
Leave
roll
behind.
with those and kind of push away the things that didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we'll see what happens with that. But it's a good overall good game. It's on sale right now, actually 20% off at Sony. So by the time this drops, I don't know if it still will be or not, but if it is, it might be worth it at 20% off. That's like $15 off. So pretty decent deal. And then I am almost done with season 2 of Hacks, which I've been cruising through on HBO. I talked about it last week or the week before, but it's about an aging female comedian, one of the top female comedians in the world. She's been doing a Vegas residency for decades now, right? So she just has a show she does in Vegas, making tons of money, doing the same material over and over again. This girl um, accidentally, she's a comedy writer, or is trying to be a comedy writer. In the middle of working on one show, she sends out a tweet that was very questionable, and she got fired for it. And no, she's basically blackballed. But her manager agent doesn't want to lose the business, and this other comedian is also his agent, so he kind of shoves them together. And so it's a comedy for sure, but it's definitely like a more of a heartfelt comedy. It's definitely an HBO style comedy, right? It's not just a sitcom. So there's a lot of heart in the things that go on, and them coming together and starting to work together. And season 2 has developed a lot on that. And the Jean Smart is the main actress, and she's been nominated for Golden Globes twice. I think she's won at least one. Um, but the actress that plays the other girl was nominated for a Golden Globe for season 2, and I hadn't watched it yet. And I was kind of like, oh, okay. But she's grown a lot in season 2. So but it's a good show. It's like a really good show. It's been nominated for a few Golden Globes. And I would definitely recommend it if you're down for something that is funny. It's not silly. It's not slapstick comedy. It's not like if you've seen The Righteous Gemstones. Like
I've heard of it.
it's not that funny.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is a little more irreverent and a little more it's a little more about these two coming together. It's about these two women kind of learning the difference in their generations too, because the Jean Smart is in her 60s or 70s, and this girl's like 20, or 20 something. So yeah.
She played did you watch the Watchmen on HBO?
Yeah.
Yeah, she played Silk Spectre.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm like, where have I seen her?
yeah. No,
And
she's been around a lot.
yeah,
She's
no, I see.
fantastic. She's fantastic. And so it's good. It's really good. And then the other thing I watched is my horror movie group with this last Wednesday watched an old 90s film called Tammy and the T-Rex. I cannot recommend this film to anybody. It was unless you want to watch something absolutely ridiculous. It was funny, but it was super bad. But it was Paul Walker and Denise Richards in what had to be some of their absolute earliest roles, written by a dude who's never written anything else that mattered to anybody. And the premise of the show, and God, dude, the writing and acting is so bad. Like how these two had a career after this, I don't even know. Obviously, Denise Richards was hot,
Yeah.
like that helped, and so is Paul Walker, to be fair. Um, but she, they have this relationship. I guess they're in love. They don't really ever say it before, and then he gets beat up, and this mad scientist takes his brain, pretends he's dead, takes his living brain out of his body, and plugs it into a robotic T-Rex.
Uh, what
And
was
then bent on revenge, this robotic T-Rex goes out and kills a bunch of people. It's so dumb, so dumb. But it was, I mean, it was fun if you watch it for the camp factor, right? Like you have to go in knowing it's like
bad?
it's just not good. It's not meant to be good. I mean, somebody might have hoped it was good when they made it. I don't know, but it's not good. Like you don't go and watch it and expecting anybody to win any kind of award for this thing at all. Uh,
Interesting.
but it's fun to watch with a group of people
Sure.
who are looking to laugh at something.
Yeah.
And so, but it really was interesting to see like a young Denise Richards act and a young Paul Walker act, and it's one of those things too where you kind of remind yourself the difference between somebody that actors aren't just acting on their own. Like I feel like you can put Leonardo DiCaprio out there and he's probably always going to be good, right? But a lot of actors rely on the director and they rely on the script and they rely on these other things to help them be
Elevate
as good
them.
as they can be. Because you'll see some actors go out there that are good and they do something you're like they weren't very good in that. Um, and so it does kind of show you that like especially somebody like Denise Richards and Paul Walker, they needed a better actor, or sorry, a better director to bring out the best in them to do stuff,
Yeah.
to do the things that they've done. So it's fun in that regard. It's not good. It's not good,
But
but it's
fun.
fun. Yeah.
Nice.
So with that, we can really quick jump into the Conjuring 2 as we move forward in our Conjuring universe. We've only done the Conjuring and Annabelle, right?
Right.
And now the Conjuring 2.
Yes. So I was excited to see The Conjuring too, just because like going back to like my childhood, my first like demonic anything was actually the Amityville Horror Part 2, which is like a prequel to the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
So Burt Young always, I'm totally tangenting here, but like Burt Young always like ruined, like, he was a mean dad in that movie and he would beat the kids with a belt and everything. And so when he gets blown away, you're like, okay, cool, whatever. Anyway, Conjuring 2 starts off at the Amityville house, which was cool. But then it goes off into like this British house that has a haunting because some guy like died in like a rocking chair and he's now like basically saying this is my house. And again, I have to emphasize the accent because there's nothing scary to me about a British accent in a monster like voice. I'm just like laughing the whole time, like, do you want tea and crumpets now? Like seriously, like you're not scaring me at all. But anyway, so it's totally British and like some fuck up shit's happening in the house, of course. And the Warrens eventually get called out and they do their thing, and eventually they save the day. And I mean, I know you probably have more to say about it, but like to me it's like it almost felt a bit color by numbers. Like it felt a little too much like the first movie. Like it's the same shit over again with a British fucking window dressing. Like it's just like a British skin on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't that scared. But look at that. Like
Holy shit.
we conjured Andy
Yeah.
into existence.
Since you just jumped in the middle and we're already going. Did you watch The Conjuring 2?
Yes, I did.
You did. All right. So we'll get your take on it in a second. I'll go real quick.
Yeah, go.
What I can say about it is that I think the reason that it feels so paint by numbers is that what they were doing in that, it was very much doctored. Like they weren't as involved in that case as the movie suggests. In real life, they were there for something like 2 days.
Okay.
Like they showed up and left. It is a true story, and the whole controversy about whether they were faking it or not was a real thing too. Like they got caught faking some of the things. Somebody was recording out the window. They got caught faking some of the things that were happening in the house, and so they never got the exorcism. They never got the they never got the investigation that they wanted to get, and so it was hard for them, and there are things about it that were still debatable, like the Warrens did get those recordings that they talked about, because in the end credits they play the actual recordings.
That was freaky.
But like at one point the girl did have water in her mouth and still spoke clearly, right? Like with the demon voice and all that. So it's this funky catch-22 where like, were they faking for more attention, but it was real? Were they faking the whole thing? Like the people involved, they're like, no, I saw the bed come off the ground. Like all these things that people that weren't going to get any real money or anything from it still witnessed it and had these things to say about it. So it's a trip to, and I don't think there was ever really an answer to it, because they did their thing and it went away. And then they lived in that house, or the mom lived in that house until she passed away. So
in the same fucking way, by the way, at least
Right.
according to the movie. And I do buy that, like the demon was like, if you don't fake some of this shit, I'm gonna kill somebody. Like I bought that.
Yeah.
Like I can see a demon saying that.
And the other thing about it too is that it's important for the story side to remember that that the bad guy wasn't the dude in the chair.
Yes.
Like he was just stuck there.
Yeah.
He was being essentially held there by the real
Balak.
Yeah, the real bad guy who was the nun.
Yeah.
So that was a trip too. But yeah, it did feel more color by numbers, because I think they were coloring by the numbers. They were trying to match what they did in the first one with a story that they didn't have as much to work with as they did in the first one, because it wasn't as real.
What's terrifying is that there was that much to work with, though. You know what I mean? Like, I totally get you. It was paint by number for sure. But the fact that that is based on a true story, just any part of that story being true, it's fucking terrifying. Like, it changes your perception. So I don't know. I apologize for jumping in so late. I don't know if we've voted on how we feel about the supernatural or the extraordinary. But for me, I don't see why it can't be, right. Like the same way you can't prove to me that there's a God and there's Jesus exists. If I can say that can exist, then of course these other things can exist, right? So it is just crazy to think about that. Even if just the littlest sprinkle of salt on that movie is based on real things, it's terrifying. It's terrifying, right?
See, it doesn't scare me. It doesn't scare me because, number one, I think it would have to happen to me for it to really scare me. That's definitely part of it, because, and that's one thing you weren't on, but I talked about with Andrew the last time when we talked about Annabelle, and there was a real detachment in that movie for me, in that when she was in the basement and you see the demon and the lights are coming off and on, and she's getting chased into the elevator, and it's all scary shit. When I was watching it, for some reason, I was so detached from it that I was like, if I was in her position, I know that I would be scared as shit. Like that would be terrifying. But watching it on film, I was just like, meh. Didn't scare me at all. The Conjuring 2 didn't scare me at all. Like it's just like
fair. So I see your point. These movies definitely jump scared me. And I watch horror movies, and I'm not a good person to watch horror movies with because I laugh when people are supposed to be scared. So when everybody else is screaming, I'm like De Niro in what you call it? Ha 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 ha! What's that movie with Juliette Lewis?
oh, Cape Fear.
Cape Fear, yeah. When he's laughing in the theater, like that's I'm horrific. Like my kids will not go see horror movies with me because I will just whatever there's supposed to be something scary and everybody's like, ah, I just laugh like a stupid some bitch. But no, I get it. Like for sure, it would be terrifying in real life, of course. But just the fact that it was based on something that was even trivially true to me is a little bit like, wow, it's goofy.
So Andy, I'll say this, like I definitely like I'm only just finally dabbling into this Conjuring universe because being raised Catholic, I have always been like I can handle slasher movies, I can handle Jason, I can handle even Freddy. But once you start bringing like Satan shit into the mix, I'm good because but then Kevin said something that changed my whole thing. He was like, there's never been a documented like death, like as in like killing from possession, so I actually had to Google, and I Google it, and like, yeah, people have died because they were like from malnutrition, but we don't know if that was like the demon or if it was just like, they're being, they're tied to the bed and they're like, and they just fucking die, right? Like that's fine. Like if I'm whatever, I wouldn't let that happen because I like food too much. Anyway, point is this. I'm not nearly as scared anymore. And whenever someone does end up like dying or like the demon tries to like kill them, I'm thinking this is embellishment. Like that doesn't happen. It usually looks more like a bad case of schizophrenia than like anything like super scary. So now I can look at like this Conjuring shit as just factual shit embellished by Hollywood
Entertainment
to make it and again, like I was saying before you got on, like I don't know, British accents, like in sales, if I was a British salesman, dude, I'd be killing it. I think people love hearing British accents because they just automatically think you're smarter. Go back to Perceptor and fucking Transformers, he's fucking British, because he's smart, right? So for me, if you're a British demon and you're like, get out of my house, I'm not scared, dude. Like you want some fucking Tetley tea, Earl Grey hot? Like I'm good. Like you're not scaring me, dude. So anyway, Annabelle scared me. The first Conjuring definitely scared me. But like this one, I was just kind of like, I was just waiting for it to be over so I can just say, you know what? I've seen another Conjuring film. I do like Ed and Lorraine. I think they have a great relationship. Yeah. As a matter of fact, it's like they are a fucking awesome marriage. I love that shit. But but I'm with you. I'm with you on taking this shit seriously. Like, yeah, like it's crazy. The scariest part of the movie for me, honestly, was just in the end credits when they play the tape and it's actually the fucking demon's voice. Yeah, that to me was freaky.
So have neither one of you ever had an experience at all with something that you can't make sense of?
Man, you must have been so cool to hang out with in college because this is some late night college covering conference. I actually have had some experiences. Not unlike what I saw in the movie, as a matter of fact. So we want to go there, we can go there.
Let's go. Bring it.
So me first? All right. So
go ahead.
All right. So the first thing I'll start with is sleep paralysis is a thing for me, like straight up. Like
dude, me too. That's terrifying.
It is the worst because you feel it, like something's there, dude. And it's just like, and it would keep happening. Like I'd have nights where literally I'd get out of it, and then it would happen like literally like 30 minutes later, and then get out of it, and then 30 minutes later again, and it wouldn't stop until I got one of those like orange Gideon's Bibles and put it under my fucking pillow. Boom, stopped. Crazy.
Oh,
And
that's
when it
terrifying.
happens, like I go straight to fucking like, sorry God, but like I go straight to like Jesus, blah blah blah. Like I'm just arming myself with all this shit in my head, and it works. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is I was lying, like I'll just say, like me and my girlfriend were like, it was the morning, whatever. We heard like what felt like claws, like on the window. And I think we were both feeling kind of sleep paralysis at the same time. So the freaky thing was we both looked at each other like, did you hear that? Did you feel that? And we're both, and she's like, yes. And we were both like, what the fuck is happening? Okay. UCSB is cursed ground. Okay. The third thing, because all this is at UCSB. The third thing, and no, there's two more. The third thing is I remember waking up in the middle of the night and feeling something cold against my cheek. So then I'm like moving around. Why is everything so fucking smooth? And I turn over and I'm looking down at myself in my bed. And then as soon as I realize what's happening, zoom, right back into my body. And the fourth and final one was I woke up and looked up and saw like a guy. He looked like almost like an orderly. Like I couldn't tell. He looked like he had brown skin, couldn't make out his face, but he had a white t-shirt, white pants, and he was literally just like he was on the ceiling in the corner staring at me. And I was just like, what the fuck? And then he was gone. So I've had those four things. They're all UCSB oriented. I do think that there was something like fucking with me, but that shit's over. So I've had some shit happen. All right, that's me.
That's crazy.
You see, I feel like if that had ever happened to me, something like The Conjuring would mess me up a little more.
Okay.
For sure. But I haven't, and I'm not stupid enough to challenge that and be like, because one of the stories about Annabelle is that somebody literally went up and like talked shit to the doll, like in the Warrens' house, but went up into the museum and was like, said some crazy shit about, oh, I dare you to do whatever, I'm not afraid of you, blah blah, and like they died like 2 weeks later. And so like I'm not stupid, like I'm not going to push my luck just because I don't necessarily think these things are going to happen to me, and they haven't yet doesn't mean I don't think they can. Or at least the idea of them happening is scary enough that I don't want to fuck with that.
Yeah, like
Have you guys? Did either one of you look up Google Robert the Doll when I texted it out?
I've known about Robert the Doll for a long time. Yeah, that was true.
Yeah, that doll makes Annabelle look like somebody you would give to your grandkid to hang out with and have a fun time with.
Yeah, the history of Annabelle isn't as freaky as they make it out to be in the movies. Like, it's not good. Like,
no, it's not.
There's been weird shit around it, and it's locked up in their little museum for a reason. And the rumor is that it moves around on its own, even in its little, in its cage. But Robert the Doll was some messed up shit.
Yeah, like there's famous people who have done some shit, and like they're writing letters to Robert the Doll to like apologize for their misgivings and shit like that. Like that doll is terrifying. So, but Andrew, I don't have four. I cannot top you, nor even equal you in your paranormal activity. Um, I have maybe one and a half I can share. For sure, when I was about 12 or 13 years old, too old to be put to bed by my parents, but old enough where they probably still popped their head and said goodnight. Right? So I'm thinking 12, 13, 14. This was in San Ramon. I had turned on, KNBR 680 to help, on a 30-minute timer to help me get to sleep. and I was closing my blinds. And as I'm closing my blinds, I'm just looking out, and it's dark out, so I'm seeing my reflection, right? Because the window's black. And right before I get to like the last two twists to close it all the way out, I left, and something else came and was just stared at me for those two twists. And I twisted it back open, and I was back. But for two twists, it was not me, not something that looked like me. I wasn't tired. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't anything else. It was just, it wasn't me. It was not me staring back at me.
What was it? What did it look like?
Like this almost, right? Just like if it was Kevin or you or Pete, it was not me. It wasn't scary.
Okay.
It wasn't like gory or somebody with a knife trying to but it just wasn't me. It was something else. But there was nothing else that it could have been besides me staring back at me. It wasn't the neighbor. It wasn't like, oh, it's Andrew, my neighbor. Hey, they must turn their light on. So it was something I've never seen before. But it was staring back at me.
So neither of you guys have ever had sleep paralysis before?
No. I have. Oh, I've had sleep paralysis.
Okay.
I have it like 3 or 4 times a year, and it's terrifying. I fucking hate it. Yeah. I hate it. So it's the worst.
Kevin, have you heard of it?
Oh yeah, definitely heard of it. There's a whole bunch of research in it and things like that. Whether it's what people think it is, whether it's your brain like trying to fall asleep and triggering something else in your body. There's all kinds of crazy research around it. Like if you look it up, there's a lot of psychology behind it, as well as ghosts and monsters.
The way I rationalize it, it's like basically there's a chemical that your brain puts out to keep you from like rolling out of bed and shit like that, like moving in your sleep. So you wake up, but the chemical is still in your system. Like that's like my kind of scientific.
It's DMT. Yeah.
That's my
scientific. See, and I think I don't have that problem because I thrash around like I'm fucking drowning in my sleep. Like I move around a lot when I sleep. I always have. Like my mom had pictures of me when I was a kid where in my sleep fell off my bed. I've got one foot on the bed, blankets all over me, but I'm asleep like at an angle, half on the bed, half on the floor. Like it didn't bother me. I could sleep anywhere, anyway, anytime.
I don't move at all. I wake up and I can get out of bed and just like tuck my covers back up, and I don't even make my bed. Like I don't move when I go to bed at all. But the sleep paralysis, I've only had it maybe once or twice with a partner in my bed. And one time has been with Allie, and whenever it happens to me, all I try to do is scream. Mm-hmm. So I'm in my paralysis, and my mouth is open, and I'm trying everything I can to get, in my dream, in my what reality is. I'm just trying to scream. And I remember the one time with Allie, I got like out, but it was enough to break the thing. And she looked over, because I talk in my sleep all the time, so she's used to that. She's like, "Huh? What? You all right?" I'm like, "Yep, just alive." Go back to sleep. But that's the only time. I really think it's the only time I've had it with somebody in my bed with me. But yeah, I hate it's one of the worst things, because it's literally you're trapped. You're trapped. There's nothing you can do.
And the craziest thing is, like, people, like, I thought, because this is before the internet, right? Like, so like I was experiencing it before the internet, like as widespread. So when I'm actually reading that multiple people felt it, and they felt like there was like a demon in the room or sitting on them. Yeah. I'm like, how is it that I felt like, I'm getting chills again just talking about it. Like, that's crazy to me that I'm not the only one. Like, and it's always, it's a sinister feeling. That to me is like what's freaky. Whew. Anyway, again, it hasn't happened in a long time, and I think it's because like I shook it, or I'm not like in an area that's haunted as fuck or something.
It's fucking happening tonight, buddy. Good luck.
Well, I've got my Gideon's Bible ready. and hold water.
Just
So
put that shit under your bed now. Just put it under your bed now.
Yeah, like I said, I've never had that, and I'm not like I'm not challenging the world to show me what it's like, right? Like I'm not out to, I'm not crossing my fingers for my very own sleep paralysis. Like I'd be cool if it didn't happen, you know. But yeah, it's a trip. It's a trip that it happens, and you know, it's kind of like when people talk about alien abductions. You know, before the internet, when people in two different places who have never talked to each other and at least presumably have never read the stories from other people come back with the same story, you're like, doesn't there have to be something to it? It's like um when you go to look at the hieroglyphics in Egypt and then look at the hieroglyphics in Mexico. You know, there's things that are similar, but these people were never interacting with each other. So, like, what is it that they do know that that's similar? And I'm not, you know, I'm not Giorgio Tsoukalos from Ancient Aliens. My big hair and being like, it's got to be aliens. And I'm not saying it's not aliens, but you know, it's interesting that like there are shared experiences all over the world that people have, and I think it's a trip. I think it's cool, and I think it's totally rad that you guys have sleep paralysis and can talk about it, and I don't have to. So that's cool. You know,
Well, I feel like you said a magic word there, and I feel like we need to flush this out a little bit. I know this is probably a little off all pop, no culture podcast, but who believes in aliens?
I believe that
I
they exist. I don't know that they come here. I sure as shit
I
wouldn't.
I
If I was advanced enough to
100%.
travel across the galaxy, like I'd drive by this. I'd be driving through Alabama. I'd be like, no thanks. I'd be like, just wave and keep on going. Look for the next planet. It's not full of idiots.
I
This
totally,
place is a mess. Like I wouldn't stop here.
yeah, I don't disagree with you, but
We're
I
like the
totally,
Compton of space.
God, I
we're
hope,
beautiful
actually,
though.
I actually hope we are the Compton of space, actually, and I hope there's a lot more Star Trek like planets out there, to be honest. But I will say, I totally think I'm I mean, I think the pyramids were probably, there's no way for, okay, sorry. Oh, sorry. A lot of things coming up in my mind right now. From what I understand, we could not build the pyramids today if we wanted to, the way they built them, as precisely as they did. So how did they do
The actual truth is that we totally could. We totally could. It's not as impossible as they make it seem, and as it sounds in a lot of these shows. Is doable. There's a lot of things that are out there that are doable. It's not that they couldn't have done it. It's that we don't necessarily know how they did it, right? And then there's definitely a differentiator there. And I have watched every single season of Ancient Aliens, so don't fucking think that I'm not on board. But at the same time, like these things have always been possible. It's just we don't always understand how they've been possible. Like you look at now, I'm going to go deep into Ancient Aliens for you. When you look at something like Puma Punku, where they have these stones that are carved, like precision carved, and we're like, well, they didn't have the tools to do that. And the simple fact is, we don't know that they didn't have the tools to do that. Like we look at the tools that we have found in ancient, you know, in ancient sites that we've dug up and things like that, and none of them make sense to us. But that doesn't necessarily mean they didn't have a different way to do it that we don't understand now. That's been lost to time, right? So,
or lost to aliens?
sure. And dude, again, I'm not saying it's not aliens. Like, I love Giorgio and his whacked ass hair. Like that dude's dope. Um, and to be fair, I think yesterday, the U.S. just released another UFO report because they're having to officially release these now. And there's still a significant portion of them that are unexplained. So stuff is happening in the world that is weird. Is it aliens? Maybe. I definitely I believe enough to say that it could be. You know,
Yeah.
I know that when I go outside and I look up at the stars and I can't count the number of stars, and I know that those are just some of the stars in our own galaxy, let alone other galaxies. And those stars would have X number of planets around them, and those planets, somewhere out there is other life. Period. Like that, I don't question that at all. Is it traveling, the cosmos faster than we can understand, going from point A to point B in a flash? I don't know.
Andrew.
But well, actually, before I answer, I actually want to know like why you ask. Like I mean, because to me it's like aliens, like, okay, if they're aliens, great, but what does that mean? Like, what does that mean for us? Because if they're hitting us before we hit them as far as visiting, that's not good. Like, if they are like, when you go back to like colonialism, for example, usually what happens is when motherfuckers show up to a new place, the motherfuckers who are already there, shit doesn't go well for them.
Yeah, you don't
I'm
really
just
stick
saying.
around.
Yeah. So that's why I
Well,
want to know. Like, I don't know if I want them to find us until I want to be the finders.
I think my personal belief is that any alien, any aliens would be more like Star Trek. They wouldn't be. Why would you traverse the universe to come to us to take us over?
Resources.
It'd be
Yeah, I
yeah,
saw
but
Nope, dude. Sometimes they're just fucking hungry.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
man.
like
Our planet is
there's a
dope.
million reasons. Like, well, why did we sail all the way across the ocean for another continent?
Exactly.
Like, for more shit,
Under.
for more places to take over, for overpopulation, for XYZ. Um, there's there's a lot of reasons that aren't good. There
Like,
are
people
reasons
don't
that are
really
good. There is the benevolent, like we have transcended
the
through so
Vulcans.
much, and now we want to share our knowledge with the universe. There is the very Star Trek thing where we've flown by your planet 10 times. You're not ready for us, so we're going to keep going. And when you are ready, we'll be there. And like that's Next Generation when in the film, uh I'm gonna get in so much trouble for not remembering which one it is, but when they create the warp engine, when the dude creates the warp engine for the first time, when they're waiting for the Borg to come back in time.
Yeah. First
Um,
contact.
first contact.
First contact. There you go. And so is that like are aliens just cruising by, double checking, and being like, no, they're not ready yet. They don't have X, Y, and they're not meeting the criteria we have, so we're going to keep going. But those are benevolent aliens, right? But if they can travel this far, how do we know they're not like, cool, you happen to have the molten core of your planet we want. We're going to suck that out and peace out. Like, we're just going to drain your planet and go, and you're going to die. Like,
But that's exactly why I think that they're only benevolent, because if they wanted the resources, they would take them. Why the cloak and dagger? They would just be like, we're here, you're done, thanks so much, go fuck yourself.
well, there's a thing about that too. Like, let's say all the governments of the world knew about aliens. There's always that theory that if they were to just announce that aliens are coming around, that people would lose their shit, right? Like,
No,
there's a
yeah,
certain
no, for
human
sure.
mentality to finding out that we're not alone that is scary too. And then you've got the chaos, you've got what that would do to organize religion, right? Like,
I'm so
like
glad you brought that up, actually.
Watch Contact, both of you. But
oh,
yes,
I've seen
go ahead,
Contact.
Andrew.
Yeah,
I have not seen Contact, but to me, I also think that what we think of as gods or God or whatever could actually be a fucking alien. Like,
sure,
I
absolutely.
absolutely, yeah. So to me, it's like, especially even the whole idea of like Jesus will come again, like, at the end. The thing is with space travel, right? Like, that deals with time. So, you could be like 10 years to you while you're traveling could be like 1,000 years to like a planet standing still, you know?
Mhm.
So all of that, you know, like being raised up into the sky, like, so yeah, no, I don't necessarily think that. I used to think that like if there's aliens, that means there's no God, right? But now I'm thinking, no, maybe we just like the people who are writing the Bible, they had no way of understanding that this is a fucking spaceship and they're aliens, so they're gods, you know? Um, yeah, I just yeah, I just think that I think powerful beings more often than not will not have the interests of the less powerful beings. um you know, they don't give a shit. We're just ants to them, to me. But I do think the benevolent ones do exist, and Star Trek shows you both sides. As a matter of fact, I think Star Trek, it's more realistic. I think most of the other aliens aren't really like cool with the humans, man. It's the Vulcans who came and were like, let's actually be peaceful and let's aspire to higher ideals. We were beefing with the Klingons, but then by the time you get to the next generation, the Klingons are now finally like they're part of the Federation, you know? So, you know, but the Romulans are still like, fuck you guys. And the Romulans are actually like, the Romulans and the Vulcans are actually, I think, like the same race. It's almost like, you know, Muslim and Hindu in a way, or India, like Pakistan. Like, anyway, point is, I yo, I'm too excited. Andy, you're awesome. I love this shit. Like, I want to live forever. I totally want to like become half human, half cyborg. I want to see space. I'm down for all that shit, okay? But until I actually like demonstrate that I'm worthy of that shit, you know, they're probably gonna be like, here's just a fucking another flesh creature from Earth. Like, just like, what are you doing here? Like, bye. Like, I just, yeah, yeah.
Andrew,
Sorry,
you got to watch Contact.
I will. I'll finish it. I know it's like Jodie Foster and
Jodie
that
Foster, yeah.
Yep.
McConaughey, is it?
Yep.
Mm, is Matthew McConaughey
Yes.
in that?
Yes, he is.
Oh,
Okay, yeah.
He plays the priest like figure in the
oh,
movie.
okay.
Yeah, no, it's probably the most germane movie to this conversation for you, Andrew. So you should totally watch it because it is.
Jermaine versus Tito.
No,
Sorry, keep going.
Nice.
I had to. Sorry.
G, not J. But yeah, it's probably the most similar to this conversation
Word up.
for you to, and again, which is why I said this last week or last week before last that I want like a Contact too. Like it would be curious to see 30 years later that movie have a sequel. It'd be good, especially now. I don't know. Aliens are cool. I I think they're amongst us at this point. I do, and
Like
I'm not like
humanoid,
Like
I
the
don't
lizard
know.
people running the government?
like V.
I don't
Like
know. I don't know.
which websites are you on, dude? Like
No,
who are you following?
I'm not like some QAnon or some weird people that like there's lizard people running the government. I don't think that. But I I do think yeah, I do think we've been visited and we know we've been visited by aliens. And just to what degree, I don't know.
Cool.
It's
That's
all I'll say is possible. Like I'm not saying that I've never seen anything that like definitively to me says that we have, right? Like I've never seen that one thing that I'm like, yep, that's the fucking smoking gun. But I've seen enough
yeah.
things that I'm like that could be for sure.
But I
Like
also
you said,
like
when you talk about ancient aliens, when you talk about again Pumapunku, the pyramids, things like that. Yeah, they could do them, but they also, you know, I wouldn't say that they weren't necessarily built with the help of you know,
others.
Klingons.
I'm kind of with Andrew in a sense that I was raised Catholic and I believe in something that's more than us. So if I can jump to that conclusion,
It was a jump to conclusions, Matt. You see, it would be this mat that you would put on the floor and would have different conclusions written on it that you could jump to.
That is the worst idea I've ever heard in my life, Tom.
Yes, it's horrible, this idea.
there's no reason for me to not jump to other conclusions, which means that perhaps, yeah, maybe the aliens are the god that we see, or the one that we worship. I don't know. It just seems too odd. That, and I also think dragons were real too.
Going back to mixing space with Judeo-Christian shit, did you ever see Event Horizon, Andy?
Totally.
All right.
Yes.
So that movie was a trip because it's like
Totally.
it's like hell is real. And this ship has been to hell and now is basically like it's haunted. And man, that was a mind fuck, because to me it's like when I think science fiction and all that, then all of a sudden like religion just kind of goes out the window. So to have religion mixed with that, I think almost doubled the terror for me, because it's like, wow, nowhere is safe. Like I just thought, okay, on Earth you're like haunting the Amityville house, okay, but we're not on Earth anymore, so there's no devils and anything. This is just like alien shit now. But nope, 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 nope. There is a hell. Event Horizon's been there, so yeah, you better watch.
It's one of my favorite horror movies of all time.
Yeah,
I've seen it so many times.
It's fantastic. But Contact is like the opposite of that. Contact is like showing the benevolent side of that coin. Yeah, I'm very curious to see you watch that, Andrew.
I'm watching it this week. All right, I'll be
Yeah.
able to talk about it when we get back next week.
Yeah, do it. It's worth it. But for sure, I don't want to leave my dragon comment out in the open, but I'm gonna totally throw Joe Rogan to the podcast here. But he's had a couple of guys on recently talking about dinosaurs and prehistoric creatures, and how that almost every culture has some sort of flying dragon or flying dinosaur in it. And the reason why people or the people on that podcast said it's true is that if they were truly flying dinosaurs or dragons, whatever you want to call them, they would have bird-like bones, so they'd be very hollow. So they would never fossilize, because they would just decompose before they could fossilize. So if there were some predatory creature that flew and tried to eat people, we would very securely try to kill them as fast as possible. And if we did do that, then there would be no bones. There'd be no bones to fossilize, because they would decompose before we could.
I don't think that's true, because most of the flying dinosaurs that do exist had hollow bones, and then we found their skeletons and fossils. That's how we know that pterosaurs and all those exist.
But what if they were really, really
See,
like it
check their credentials of the people that Joe Rogan talks to.
I love your comeback. I loved your comeback. You're like, but what if they're like really hollow? Like that was great. That was brilliant.
What if they're made out of straws, like this theory?
It's just so strange that there's dragons in every culture on every continent, where they would have had no contact, but in every culture there are dragons. That just seems odd to me.
Yeah.
Maybe they just thought snakes could fly.
Yeah, okay, that movie, again with
Rain of
McConaughey,
Fire.
and thank you. I like that movie. I think it's totally underrated. And yeah, I liked it. I fucking liked it. And yeah, I don't know. I just yeah, I don't know if dragons are real. I'm not saying they're not real per se. I'm not as inclined to say that they are real as aliens. I think aliens have a much bigger probability, probably. But it's I would have to dig into it. I'm keeping an open mind, keeping an open mind. But I think to Kevin's point, yeah, like you'd think that we would have found some sort of fossils, like unless these dragon bones are like different than like other reptile bones, like okay, like I also think, frankly, that it's very possible that whole entire civilizations have come and gone that we don't even know about. I think that's possible. Um, Especially if it took place where the Pacific Ocean is now, because the Pacific Ocean is gigantic. And like I don't think we think about how big it is. And that's why there's so much that goes on that we don't even know about. So I don't know. I just think that when you look at time and you look at time as like layers of sediment, like we've had this conversation or like about how like on the calendar, like whatever, but like even geological time, like we're a fucking flash,
Yeah, we
so
do not matter. Like just
yeah.
on this planet, like we're nothing. Humanity is nothing. There's been so many, yeah. Because what is it? What are we? 4 billion years old, basically, planet Earth. Like
Yeah.
three. It's that's a long time. Like it's a scale that you cannot fucking fathom. Like really, like even when you put the numbers out and you write it out and compare it to like, I don't know, the 45 years, 46 years we've been around, like it's
Like
nothing.
each
Just
dinosaur age was millions of years,
yeah,
okay? So
yeah.
when you think about 100,000 years on a human scale, that's still gargantuan, but that's
Mhm.
nothing compared to how long the dinosaurs are around. So to me, it's like things could have come and gone that we don't even know about, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
I have
sure.
so many podcasts you should listen to right now. I'm not gonna say anything because I would just go on a Joe Rogan tirade that he's had so many people on in the last like couple of weeks that are crazy information about like they
Yeah, there's the guy
younger.
that has his Netflix show that has been totally debunked as being a total fucking crazy man. But
Well,
he
like
got his show based on what he said on Rogan.
yeah, but there's been some very interesting things lately that I don't know.
I gotta say
I
though, oh, keep going.
no, that's it. Go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, I gotta say, The Conjuring 2 has definitely like birthed, I think, probably one of the most spiralingly diverse lines of conversation in the history of the APNC. And if all this makes it, that's incredible. We hope we get new listeners. We hope we don't turn off anyone who was already listening. But damn, dude, like I did not walk into this show thinking we were going to talk about dragons and aliens and like, you know, yeah, this has been a trip. Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, yeah. It's fun. Like it's cool. I always think that like this stuff. Like I have these conversations with people I know too. It's just it's interesting stuff, and I think what makes it interesting to people that like actually take the time to think about it is it doesn't necessarily matter if it's true or not. The question is like, can you look at it and say, is there enough of a question that it could be true? Right? Like again, aliens, like there's not one sitting on my front lawn right now. Like I'm not looking out my window and there's a green dude out there waving at me. But like there are things that you can look at and be like, that could have been like, and so I think that's what makes the conversation interesting. And you look at, again, Mexican pyramids and Egyptian pyramids, and why do they have these things in common when they were separated by entire oceans when we didn't, at least to our knowledge, have boats that traveled that way. So it's interesting for sure.
That reminds me of something. I think there's something about like the pyramids being in the same line as Orion's belt or something like that. Have you heard of that?
The Egyptian pyramids, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And like and how humanity might have started from them. like maybe the aliens came from Orion's belt. As a matter of fact, I think that that's where Prometheus, I think that when the Prometheus people go out to like find the engineers, I think the engineers are from like that region.
Yeah, that one's not uncommon. That is definitely a more common theory than you would think it would be. But yeah, like the measurements of it and stuff come out exactly the same. There's a lot of numerology shit that you can get into too when you start to look at that stuff. That stuff's pretty wild. But sometimes it's also like working the numbers until it makes sense, right? Like it's like I don't understand this, but I made it fit into this, so this is what it is. And to be fair, that's how science works. It's prove it right until you can prove me wrong. But that's what a theory is versus an actual fact. But yeah, I'm gonna move us along because we went down a rabbit hole. And I'm gonna jump into The Last of Us. So this is like, you guys haven't been on the show long enough to understand that Pete would understand how many times that I have brought up the video game on the show before it was going to be a TV show. And I played the original game when it released in 2013. And that was on the PlayStation 3. They did a remaster of it for the PlayStation 4. I played it there. I played the sequel on the PlayStation 4. They completely remade the game for the PlayStation 5. I have played it on the PlayStation 5. So I played this. I don't replay video games. Like, usually I play a game and I'm done. I've played this game like 10 times. Amazing. Like, so it is by far my favorite video game of all time. But I've always known, like, because what attracted me to it was the story, and we'll get to what happens in the very beginning of this first episode before that time jump. But that moment that we see right before the time jump, when that happened, when I first played the game, number one, my daughter was basically the same age as Sarah. So like, that was a gut punch for me. But at the same time, I was like, if a video game can do this, like, this is impressive. And so that always stuck with me. And so I've been pulled into that ever since. And I always knew that not everybody plays video games. And I know a lot of people that don't, and a lot of people that would love this story. Right. And so I've always hoped that they would find a way to do it. So when it finally was announced that HBO was going to do it as a series, because they had tried a couple of times to make a movie, I was like, cool, I hope they don't fuck it up. And then it was Neil Druckmann as the original creator, is going to be working on it with Craig Mazin from Chernobyl. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, they're not going to fuck it up. It may not be as good as the game, I don't know, but they're not going to fuck it up. Like, these two guys I believe in. Chernobyl was incredible, and Neil, having created it, would be the right guy to do it. So the story is that HBO and Sony were harassing Craig Mazin for a long time. Sony was like, which one of our video games would you like to make into a show? And he didn't really think that The Last of Us was something that he could do, or that he thought he could do. And what's her name from Westworld? Shannon Woodward from Westworld. She worked on Westworld, and she somehow got Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann to have a lunch date. And so she talked them into talking to each other. And as soon as they did, this whole thing just like came together.
Nice.
So like, she's actually the one like linchpin that's responsible for the show. But yeah, like, so what I've been waiting for, what I've been grabbing for people in this last week, and everybody that I've talked to, is just like, did you like it? Like, because almost everybody that I'm talking to hasn't actually played the game. And for me, it's like one of the biggest games of the last decade. It won something like 200 Game of the Year awards the year it was out. Like, it destroyed at the Game Awards. And it's a trip to me. So I think from our chat, I know the answer, but like, did you guys like the first episode? Because you don't have any context to the show, right? Or to the game, right?
I don't. Did you, Andy?
No, I never played the game before. I walked into it cold, and it was gripping.
Yes.
It was. I mean, I know. So again, I never played the game. I can't even imagine what the game would be like because to me, I want to read the book. Right. This just seems like an amazing property. And you know, again, who knows what the game's like? Is I don't know, but I want to play the game now just to see what it's all about. But in the same breath, like it's almost better than a game. I don't know. Like it's weird. Like what what other movies have been that have been turned into movies from games? Like
I mean,
Uncharted,
that.
Uncharted, Mortal
Nothing,
Kombat, Halo, in recent memory.
garbage.
Yeah,
Uh, that one Tomb Raider. I think they've
Tomb
done two of
Raider.
those.
That was
No, I mean
serviceable.
nothing really has been amazing. Um, so yeah,
Yeah,
It's been a struggle. Like that's the
yeah,
thing too, is that like they're like this is a curse, right? Because you have to walk a thin line with video games in a lot of cases because there's a lot of things that you take for granted in video games to make them fun. Like you have to do things to engage the audience that are not realistic. Like in Uncharted, if you ever play Uncharted, Nathan Drake will climb shit and he'll climb anything and he never gets tired. And at one point, if you're in the middle of climbing something, you walk away, you just hang there for like 4 hours. You know, like there's just things that aren't realistic when you talk video games versus movies, and it's it's hard. There's a well known like video game to cinema curse where it's not something that you can adapt easily because the people that play video games hardcore, those are the shows and movies that things that you want to turn into or sorry, those are the games you want to turn into shows and movies. And it's a very unforgiving bunch, right? So your core audience is the people that already know your whole story. And so that was the trick with The Last of Us, is to make something where your core audience is everybody.
yeah. This does not feel like a video game at all. This feels like a movie. This feels like an interpretation of a book. This does not feel like a video game at all.
yeah.
Um,
I agree with that. Keep going. Sorry.
no, I you know, Hitman was another
Oh
uh,
yes,
video game that turned movie, and I actually,
Assassin's Creed.
yeah, and I
which was
to
terrible.
be
I
fair,
heard.
well, it wasn't great, but I enjoyed both of those movies, but they weren't something. I I watched them. I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, it's a we made a movie out of video game, and it was fun to watch, and that's great. But this really feels like something more. But I do think it's because of the series too. If they tried to make The Last of Us into a movie that's 2.5 hours long, call it. I mean, I don't know how it's supposed to end, right? So I can't tell you that, but I can tell you the first episode was an hour and a half long, and I barely got a taste of it, right? If there
Yeah.
was only if this was a 2 episode movie, right, it'd be horrible. But I
Agreed.
think it needs a platform like this where there's probably I don't know how many episodes, 8, 9, 10,
There's
Nine.
whatever it is.
nine. There's nine. It was going to be 10. So the pilot was actually originally 2 episodes. And they decided that where they were going to cut it off, they're like, that didn't work. It was going to,
So
I think it was going to cut off like right after.
She dies.
No, it was going to go a little further than that.
Okay.
So it was going to be after the time jump a little bit, which they were like, it's a weird place to do it. And when you watch it now, you're like, that's perfect.
Perfect.
Like, we're,
but but if there's 9 episodes that are around an hour each,
mhm.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And honestly, from a gaming perspective, 9 hours on a game is what it should take to kind of pass the game or to get to the end of the game. So to try to complete a game in 2 hours makes no sense, um, from a thematic perspective. But to put it in a series like this, where you can tell the whole story, makes a whole lot of sense. Which is why, I think I mentioned this like a couple of podcasts ago, that I really think anything worth any story, any really good story worth telling will probably, I hate saying this, but it makes more sense to tell it in a series than a movie. I love movies. I love movies, but I mean, how? What
It
if you
depends
told
on it
Rogue?
depends though, like because you don't want to see Top Gun Maverick as a TV series.
No. But
So
what I have loved, I love Rogue One. But if Rogue One was a 4 hour or 6 hour miniseries, I mean, how much better would that have been? I mean, look at what you call it? What do we watch? What was the
Andor.
last Andor? Andor couldn't be a movie. It would be garbage as a movie, but as a series, holy shit, that's good.
So Andy, I'm going to jump in actually. So
Do it.
I've been wanting to say this for like the last, I don't know, like 3 minutes. Ready Player One is a video game movie, and I read the book. I love the book.
but it's not an adaptation directly of a video game, so it has
Correct.
video games in
Yes.
it, but it's
Correct.
also pop culture, so it's more than just
Yeah.
individual video games. It's got other stuff too.
So for me, that's something that would have been much better as a miniseries than a movie.
I agree with that.
And when you talked about how Neil Druckmann was involved, Ernest Cline was also involved in making that film. So the fact that he let his book get devolved into that, in my opinion, underwhelming
Wasn't
film.
that Spielberg?
Spielberg and Cline wrote the book. He was involved with the movie, but it was Spielberg who directed it. Yes, that underwhelming. Like it's I'm depressed. Anyway, so going back to like The Last of Us though, phenomenal show. Loved it. I will say, like, I did see in a few places people talking about like Sarah being, like, why is she of color? Like, people were a little mad about that. I think it's a minority, no pun intended, but I feel like there's not a lot of people saying it, but I've seen it in the comments whenever I look.
So I know when this is coming out because Joel and Ellie are both very white in the video game, and so is Joel's brother Tommy, because Joel is white. His brother Tommy is white. Tess is white. She's white in the show too, but she's white. Like, as you go on, you do meet two people of color in the show, in the game, and we're going to see them in the show, and their story is fantastic. So like that'll be really interesting to see how that plays out. But they cast them as, two black actors, and for me, seeing the actors versus the characters in the game, I'm like, nailed it. But some people were shitty about Joel being Latino, right? Because Pedro Pascal isn't white. Gabriel Luna isn't white, but even one of my kids was like, well, why does Sarah look so, why does she look like that if the dad isn't? And I was like, well, number one, he is a little brown. I mean, to be fair, Pedro Pascal is a pretty white Latino. Like, he's not like particularly dark skinned, but he's definitely Hispanic, right? And even more so, Gabriel Luna is very Hispanic. But I was like, but the mom doesn't have to be. We never see Sarah's mom, and like, she could have been black as night for all we know. So my guess is she probably looks a lot like Dandy Newton.
Yes.
Like that was like, that almost distracted me too much. Like, that girl looks so much like her mom that it's crazy. And she's a beautiful girl. Like, she's gonna grow up, she's gonna be prettier than her mom, I think, when she grows up. Like, she was giving
me serious Zendaya vibes, like in her portrayal. But yeah, like that definitely, like, I did see that, and I can see why, like, when I saw like the video game image versus, although I will say, like, I think Pedro gets a pass though, because I know people who are kind of like, I know people of all like persuasion. So I know people who are
Yeah.
definitely like not on the, like, they're anti like anything remotely diversity. Okay, but they give Pedro a pass because they're like, Pedro's the fucking man. Like, so I think Pedro passes that, but I believe you when you say some people said, oh, but I didn't see it, but I believe it's there.
It was tricky too, because before he was cast, you had that whole like fan casting thing going on, right? Like,
Right.
just like you see in Marvel,
Yes.
everybody wanted Hugh Jackman. Everybody wanted Hugh Jackman. Like, there are fan made posters with Hugh Jackman. He'd have been perfect, but it's because everybody was thinking of him from Logan.
Yeah.
And this story definitely has similar, again, it's the kind of the lone wolf and cub thing. It's like what Pedro Pascal did in The Mandalorian. Like, so those things are there already, and I think that was part of the reason that everybody wanted Hugh Jackman so bad. He's too old, and technically Pedro Pascal's probably a hair too young. He doesn't look 56 to me, and he's supposed to be. But you can play with that a little bit. You can work with that.
The video game artwork reminded me a bit of Gerard Butler as well.
Mhm.
But he hadn't really done anything lately. So either way, Pedro is the shit.
Oh, he's awesome.
The other thing about Sarah though is I believe she was also, and you can tell me this, I read she was younger in the game than she is in the.
She's like 13, 14.
Oh, in
And
the
she's
game?
like, yeah.
Okay.
She's like
All right.
16 here, so she wasn't much younger.
Okay.
And to be fair, like I don't remember them specifically in the game saying her name. One thing, or sorry, not her name, her age. One thing that's really cool about this, and you guys won't get it because you haven't played the game, but is how much dialogue is lifted directly from the game.
Really?
But to excellent effect. Like that whole scene on the couch when she's
Yeah.
giving him the watch. In the game, she didn't repair the watch. She just got him the watch. Right. So that was different. And they give you something to hang on to with that too, because it seems like there's a deeper meaning to that watch. Like, why would she fix it for him and why would he keep it? Kind of makes you feel like maybe it was from her mom or something like that. They don't explain it. It wasn't part of the story in the game, so that's left hanging for you to kind of to think about. And but it's that whole dialogue where she's like, "Oh, I sell drugs, hardcore drugs," and like that is all directly lifted from the game. Tons of dialogue is directly lifted from the game.
I will say that from a lot of the other movies that I've watched that come from games, when I feel like there's been dialogue lifted, it feels very on purpose. Like it's almost like, all right, this, like you almost like you sit down and like, okay, so this is the dialogue from the game, so that we can adjust and know that it's a game. But this had none of that. So whatever dialogue was from the game, it was so transparent for the people who have never played the game, which I think is awesome, because it everything felt, if I had no idea that was a game, no clue, I would have no idea. Where I feel like pretty much every video game adaptation, there's at least one scene in the movie where you're like, well, this doesn't seem right. This seems like.
What's funny, this episode actually has that for me.
Yes.
And it's the truck driving scene. So when they're in the truck,
really,
yes,
that plays exactly like it does in the game.
Yes.
Where in the game you're watching from Sarah's point of view, and you can actually move the camera and look around at all your surroundings. And so like that was too video gamey for me, because I wanted this to be removed from a video game. I wanted it to feel like a movie. And if it had been shorter, or if they had just done it for a minute, I think it would have been fine. But that bit lasted too long for me. And granted, I'm complaining about this, but I loved it. Like, I still
Thank you.
totally dug it, but it was the most video gamey thing they did.
And I liked it. I liked it because it felt like a nod. It was super immersive. It was super like frenetic, and then like I literally almost like rewound the scene where you see the plane like just like kind of like holy shit, but it was just kind of like, no, this is some tragic shit. I'm not gonna like rewind. That's weird. But it was but it was like this like shit is going haywire, and I felt like that like I liked it. I felt like it was a great Easter egg. And if I was a video game player, for me, again, everyone's different, but like for me, if I was a video game player, I'd be like, wow, that's cool that they threw a nod to my own experience playing the damn game. I loved it. I loved it.
So I'll tell you the way the game opens up. So the game opens up basically when she's given him the watch. Like he comes home from work, she gives him the watch. So everything before that is build up, is exposition. Even that scene in the very beginning when it's back in 68 and the scientists are talking, they made that up for the show.
Oh wow.
It's
It felt
brilliant.
like a game.
It's
It felt like a
fucking
cutscene.
it was brilliant. It's so good. But you don't start until the scene on the couch. And so it goes through that. And then he puts Sarah to bed. And then in the video game, you actually play as Sarah until the car crash. And then at the car crash, you start playing as Joel and you run away with Sarah, and you're trying to get away with everything.
So
and
the whole elderly neighbor thing, that was all made up for the show.
All new.
Well, it was great. It was effective.
Because in the game, her dad is gone. So when she's walking around after she wakes up, he comes home. He comes running and closes the sliding glass door. He's like, "There's something wrong with the neighbors. They don't really." And then the dude comes smashing in through the sliding glass door. And Joel digs around in his desk, pulls out a gun, and shoots the neighbor. And that's when you still get that moment where she's like, "Oh my God, you killed him," right? But it worked to such greater effect in the show.
Oh my God, yes.
Because she was friends with these people. Like she's so sweet and she's so kind. So she cries. She takes it really hard. He's not a killer. Like at this point, right? He's not even the military man. His brother's the military man. Tommy was a Desert Storm.
That's right. And you see that on the truck, I think, or something. You see, yeah.
But yeah. Joel wasn't military. He was just a construction worker. Like he's just he's a dad and a construction worker, and that's that. And so it helped. All that stuff that they added to the beginning of the story fits so perfectly and builds you fall in love with that little character, that little girl, for a reason. Like it has to hurt you as much as it hurts him.
I have to say though, like I think because like I saw it coming, like from like I mean, like nothing shocked me. I was just kind of like, okay, well, we know she, like in my head, I'm like, we know she's dying, so like whatever, like I'm ready for it. So when it happened, like yeah, like it was supposed, wasn't that sad? I feel horrible, but the reason why is because like I know, so I'm heartless, I have no soul, I get it, but like I was just kind of like, I mean, it has to happen. Like we know, like that's what's gonna happen, so it sucks. At least like. But the way it went down, and then not just, but also the way, okay, first of all, in the video game, does it, what, what I'm talking about? At the end, when like he has that like flashback to what happened to his daughter, and that's when he reacts, in, the camp, like, and I know you're going to get to that point, so I don't want to be, like, does that happen in the game too?
No, it doesn't go down like that because
that was brilliant.
It happens faster than that in the game. Like it's not, because in the game you don't have that relationship with the guard, right? So it's all implied. Like they talk about it, they're like, oh, we're trading the ration cards for stuff. In the game they're not looking for a battery, they're looking for guns, but some of the stuff is similar, but there's a lot of stuff
so smart.
There's so much that they changed and so much that they left in. It's like this brilliant juxtaposition of what they did. But in the game, they're fighting for their life. They don't know who this guy is. He tests each one of them. He tests Ellie and sees that she's infected, and so but they don't know that she's infected yet. They just know that she knows she's infected, and she knows when she gets scanned. So that's why she stabs him in the leg, and then they have to kill him to survive. And then and then the same thing happens. They look at the scanner and they're like, and she's like, Joel, what the fuck? This kid's infected. And then they have to run. So they don't have time to think about it. So we'll get into that in the next episode. They're definitely going to have that conversation. But like there's things that are shortened and things that are extended. Like that whole opening scene was so extended. But them leaving the city is an entire like level. Like you have to go through these things and escape and climb out and do all this shit. And you have to get to Ellie and all kinds of stuff that they shortened for the game, or sorry, for the show, because in a video game you have to learn how to navigate and you have to learn how to use your weapons and you have to learn all the little secret things that you can do in the game. And so like to show the idea of testing people and doing all that in the video game, you come out 20 years later, you're walking down the street, they've got like 5 people on their knees on the sidewalk and they're testing each one. You're good, you're good, you're good. One comes up red and they're like, you're infected. And the guy's like, no, I'm not infected. He tries to run. They shoot him right there in the street. And that's just like, if you just walk quickly in the game, that just happens and you don't even have to pay attention to it. So like the world building in a video game is very different than the world building in a show. In the show, you have to know these things are happening. So instead it's the little kid. It's the little boy in the beginning.
So well done.
Yeah. I thought so too. And what was really great about it is it added a layer of heart to Fedra, which is the military organization that you don't ever get in the game. Like that woman, she doesn't want to kill a little kid, but she knows that he's infected, so she doesn't have a choice. But she's so kind to him in the process. And then it goes from, she's so kind of, oh, you're going to have food. We're going to give you as much food as you want. You're going to have all the toys you want, blah, blah, blah. Boom, dead. And then it transitions to the scene where we just got to throw his body in a fire and scoop up the ashes. And that's the society that they're in. And then that's the way the world's been for 20 years. Like, so it's definitely heavy duty. And you kind of need those impacts in a show to impact you in a different way than they would in the video game.
And that's the brilliance. That's the brilliance, because I think a lot of creatives will do a literal translation from one medium to the other without thinking about how does this need to be different for this medium. So I think that was my problem with Zack Snyder's adaptation of The Watchmen from comic book or graphic novel, I should say, to film. It was almost too literal a translation, and that's why the pacing, I think, was a little off. Whereas this show does what he didn't do, which is it is its own beast, but it is still, it's still The Last of Us, and it's just, I just gotta say, it has to be acknowledged. Like, this is brilliant shit. You're making me appreciate the show even more than I did knowing the changes they made to make it work, because it doesn't feel tacked on. It feels very organic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
there's no way this show could have been a movie.
No,
this has to be what it is. There's
and
no
they
way
tried. Like, it was on development slate as a movie before it was a TV show.
Crazy.
And they couldn't get it off the ground. Like, they couldn't get it going, and you can see why. I mean,
thank God.
You could do it, but it wouldn't be good.
No.
Like, it would be more like the video game. It would have, that opening scene would have had to been 5 or 10 minutes instead of 40 minutes, or 30 minutes. And then, instead of developing that little boy and having that conversation, it'd be walking down the street, somebody gets shot, that's bad, then you move on. And it would have literally been taking this, 9-hour video game and taking out the scenes where you're traveling from point A to point B, or you're learning things, but then you just leave in most of the other stuff, and it wouldn't be as effective. You would never fall in love with Sarah the way in the video game. You fall in love with Sarah because for just a few minutes you are Sarah. So you're that character in the beginning. So you're going through the things she's going through, and so that's how you get attached to her. In the show, you have to fall in love with her because she's perfect. Like, she's a sweet little angel child with a sense of humor. She cares about her neighbor. She takes care of her dad. She does all these things and she's smart and she's funny and all these things. And you get that in 30 minutes, because, to be fair, Nico Parker does a fucking amazing job with what she is given in that little period of time.
Yes.
Like, she's great. And I think too, for me, we'll definitely see a lot more of Ellie as the show goes on. Obviously, she's the main character of the show. But she's so vastly different than Lyanna Mormont, and so quickly different than Lyanna Mormont that that it works for me too. Like, there were definitely people that were concerned about that, or that she was, because she doesn't look like Ellie from the game necessarily. Ellie's like a little redheaded, freckles and ponytail, and this what's her name, Bella Ramsey is a little tougher looking. Like, she's a little, but she's
Bella
so
looks like the
good.
girl from Hereditary.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit.
But she's so good. And I saw an interview with her. It was hilarious. She's like, I mastered my English accent by learning how to swear. She's like, learning profanities is what helped her learn her American accent.
Well, it's
But
really good.
Yeah.
I actually I did. So she is English. I didn't know that. I thought she
So is
was
Nico.
American. Was that?
So is Nico. Like,
That makes sense actually, because of course Tandy
uh-huh.
is English. Well, they both, man. I mean, props. You English people can do our accents so well, but probably because like a lot of media is American, so you're hearing it more. Just being real.
Sure, say what you
Anyway,
want.
yeah. But like, no, I think yeah, everyone's hitting their marks like a million percent. Even like jumping around here, even like the person who played oh, what's her name? Anyway, she's the voice actress of the game who's now in the
Oh yeah,
show.
Merle Dandridge. She plays Marlene. Yeah.
Killed it. Like I buy her completely. And when she's like, I'll take her, she's like, your ear's fucking gone. Like, chill. Like, I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. She's like, you don't have a fucking ear.
Can you guys like hurry it up here? Like, love her.
Yeah, she's so great. And she's one of the only people to be cast in her original role.
Yeah.
Did you watch past the credits? Did you watch like the coming up
dude.
on?
Like okay, HBO is really good about that, because they were pointing things out. Like, the one thing I kind of saw but didn't really see until it was pointed out was the difference between Sarah and Elle's reaction to Dad's violence. And they were talking about how, oh, this is gonna be a problem because Elle is like, yes, use your hate. Like,
Yeah.
Elle is all about that life. And that was great.
She almost looks like a fucking Jurassic Park dinosaur. Like, she's just like, fuck yeah. It's a trip. But yeah, it's cool. And I really love the after show stuff, because I think those are going to get even better too. I think there's going to be more information as we go and stuff. There's HBO has a podcast also, The Last of Us podcast, hosted by Troy Baker, who was the original Joel. And so the first episode, it was just him and Neil and Craig Mazin, just talking about the show. And it's really interesting. And the one thing that they say, and I've heard it described by Neil this way since the game came out, is that The Last of Us is a love story. And not a traditional romantic love story, but it's Joel and Ellie coming together and finding this love for each other in a father and daughter way that they obviously don't have right now. Like, his first meeting, he literally throws her against a wall. Like, he fucking slams her against a wall. It's a little different than that in the game, but not that different. In the game, she literally jumps out from behind a door and tries to stab him. He just doesn't body slam her in the game. And it's interesting. Like, it's just, it all works so well. The things that they changed for the right. And I know there's things coming up that they changed a lot. I'm not going to give anything away, but I do love that that Ron Swanson is going to be in it.
Yes,
his character, he's the perfect casting for that character. They add some stuff to that storyline that wasn't in the game, that I think will be really beneficial. There's a few things like down the line that I'm hoping that they build on that were kind of ancillary backstories in the video game, that I hope make it into the show as something a little bigger, because there was some really cool stuff right around the middle of the game. So It'll be interesting. Like I'm I'm so in because I know everything that happens and I still want to watch it. Like I still want to see how this plays out. And for me, like that's a big deal. Like I'm not just watching and being like, oh, okay, this is, you know, whatever. Like it's amazing. Like the work they're doing is fantastic. I do think Pedro is perfect. I do think
Yeah.
Bella Ramsey's perfect.
Yes.
I've always loved Anna Torv. Like Fringe is one of my favorite shows. She's so good. So it'll be interesting to watch. And what I love too, like, is the weird like voyeur man in me. I get to watch you guys watch it for the first time without the context of what's coming. Like you can probably, as you go, you'll be able to guess who lives and who dies and what happens and blah, blah, blah. But like on paper, you don't know which characters are coming. You don't know who's going to live. You don't know who's going to die. You don't know, all this stuff. And I think that's pretty fucking awesome. Like part of me wishes I was watching it for the first time. And I think that's probably why I asked so many questions of all the people that I know that are watching it, is that it'll never be new to me. It'll just be a different kind of new to me. But like to see how people feel about the things that they're seeing now, I think is really cool.
We have appointment television again. Like I looked forward. I know I'm of the three of us, I liked House of the Dragon the most, but that was appointment television for me. I would straight up look forward to 9 o'clock on Sunday, and I'm looking forward to 9 o'clock tomorrow night because I want to watch it, because otherwise my feed's gonna spoil me. So I gotta watch it.
Yeah, for sure. Like this is what do they say? It's the second highest
since 2010.
viewership. Since 2010. Which is wild. It's so cool. It's so cool to me because again, I have so much love and reverence for this thing that I needed it to be good.
Yeah. On your birthday, man. Shit.
I know, right? It dropped on my birthday. That was the dopest fucking thing ever. And to be fair, I've watched the pilot episode 3 times.
Oh, can I say something?
Yeah.
Also, okay, so I'm glad that you're having a good birthday present from your media, because the guy who Ernest Cline, he was born March 29, and the fucking Ready Player One dropped, I want to say March 29th or March 30th. So for me, like I thought it was like a sign, and then I saw the movie and I was like, oh well, I guess it's a sign that I need to write my own shit and like make a movie.
There you go.
By the way, I put your pilot on my Kindle. I figure it's going to be easier to read that way than on a desktop.
Yeah, for sure.
But the problem is I need reading glasses now, because it's finally here. I need reading glasses. It's like I'm trying to read it. It's hard. But anyway,
you're doing this one.
Yes, like you're literally like I have to put the right. It's so annoying. It's the worst. But from what I'm reading, I'm not just saying this because you're like hosting this podcast, but it's good shit, man. So like anyway, I just want to say I'm looking forward to finishing Sarah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to have somebody read it. But yeah, it's I'm excited for this show. And like I said, I watched it 3 times. I watched it once by myself, like the night it came out.
Yeah.
I watched it with 2 of my kids, the 2 that were interested in watching it. The next day, I think. And then this morning I watched it with my wife because she hadn't watched it yet. And that was a big deal because she's heard me talk about this game ad nauseum for fucking almost the entirety of our marriage. And she's like, fuck, dude, I understand you like the game. Shut the fuck up. And then she watched the show and she's like, oh, okay. She's like, it's fucking good. And that's the other thing too. Like it's a 99% on Rotten Tomatoes from the critic score and a 98 from the audience score. It's a 9.3 or 9.4 on IMDb. Like,
yeah,
it's
unanimous.
Yeah. So, anything can happen. There's 9 episodes. It could totally like fall off the map. I don't see that happening. But as far as the first episode goes, it was great. And if you watch at the very end when they go through and it's panning out and you're starting to see, the carnage of the world. I didn't notice it the first time, and I think I saw somebody else post it. But up on one of the buildings, you can see one of the clickers, one of the infected, up there screaming, doing his like clicky scream thing in the background as they're walking down here on top of one of the buildings. There's one up there. So it's dope. Like there's good stuff coming, and then the very end when they over the radio comes Depeche Mode with some 80s music, so you know shit's about to go bad. Like it's brilliant. Like they did such a good job. It's so good. Yeah, so I'm
Andy,
stoked. Yeah, like I almost feel bad that we record when we do, because
I
by the time this
know.
episode comes out, the second episode will be out and other people will be talking about that, but I don't really care. It gives me an opportunity to talk about the show, and I fucking love it. So
Okay, before Andy says something, I just want to say I also love how they talked about that whole Depeche Mode song, how they were really talking about like it's really like Ellie and I saw.
Joel.
Thank you. Like, like going abroad with my best friend. It's almost like, but it's like anyway, it's there was thought behind that song
Mm-hmm.
selection, but also of course that whole happy sound, but the dark, like anyway, I can't. And that wasn't part of the video game. Even though the video game apparently does have an 80s kind of thing going on, like as far as the soundtrack, from what I understand, the Depeche Mode song was something that was exclusive to the show. So
It actually doesn't much. There's not a lot of modern music. As a matter of fact, the second game they get more into music because there's a whole guitar playing like thing in there, and it's part of the story. So that'll be interesting when they adapt that stuff. But um, music doesn't play a huge role in the first one because they don't have time
yeah.
in the game. You're traveling across the country. There's he talks about playing the guitar, but he doesn't have a guitar on him. But what was cool is that the theme song and a lot of the music that they used in the show is from the game also.
Yeah.
So the score is done by Gustavo Santaolalla, who is not a nobody. He's been around for a long time. He's done a lot of films and stuff. But he's a fantastic guitar player. And so for the second game, he went out and found a bunch of like ancient and unknown guitars. So he does all guitar music, but with different kinds of stringed instruments that are not common. And it's really cool. So it's really fun to see him. He actually, in the second game, they put him in the game. Like he's sitting outside of a bar playing the guitar, and it's actually like it's Gustavo. Like it's him animated into the game.
How many seasons is this going to be?
I don't know if they know how many seasons yet, but they are committed, I think, to doing. I think they have said they're going to do both games is the goal. They're not going to rush anything. I think from what I've gleaned, I think this first season will be the entire first game because it's a shorter game.
Okay.
They could probably do 2 seasons from the second game, but they're not going to do anything extra. They're not going to do an entire story that wasn't in the video games around the main characters. The rumor is that they're working on a third game, but I don't think they would do the show's story before the game came out. So in my mind, we're probably looking at 3 seasons.
So I have to read a couple of cool factoids here. So on Wikipedia, it says here, after watching Ramsey's audition tape, they spoke to David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, and who assured her of the talent, and they were looking for someone who could portray a resourceful, quirky, and potentially violent character. So you got to give props to Bella Ramsey for beating out 104 other auditions. Like they definitely did their homework as far as finding someone. So clearly she's going to be great. The other thing that I wanted to point out really quick is this is the largest production in Canadian history. And it was filmed between July 2021 and June 2022. So I already knew this was the most expensive thing that HBO's ever done, but for them to be filming for a year to just make 9 episodes, and for that to be the biggest production in Canadian history, because it was probably going to be too expensive to do it in the US. Yeah. Like, yeah, we are being treated here. So yeah. Thank you, HBO gods.
Yeah, I feel like like I said, I can't say for sure that the actors are necessarily going to be up for awards. It feels like they probably will be, but just cinematography, art direction, I think things like that. This is already looks like it's going to be something that's going to be killing in those categories when the time comes next year. So, and Andy, we totally just steamrolled you. What thoughts do you have on the show?
No, no steamrolling at all. I'm totally on board, stoked, and excited. I cannot wait for the next episode to come out tomorrow. Like it's annoying that we can't just like binge it. I do like the fact that we can't, because it is like appointment television again, and we can watch it anytime after it airs. But at the same time, like I just want to watch all of it right now.
Yeah,
it was so good. It was so good.
Yeah, I love that that it coming out weekly means it gives us the opportunity to talk about it every week. And I think that's cool too, because if we had binged the entire series, if we had binged all 9 episodes, we would have, maybe we wouldn't be this week, it'd be next week, but we'd be talking about the whole damn thing and then it'd be over.
Speaking of binging, I believe, Andy, you finished Kaleidoscope, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah, so I haven't started it, and I think Kevin's like...
Yeah, I'm like 3 episodes in.
Okay, so halfway. No, actually it's 8 episodes, I think, isn't it?
I think it's 8 episodes.
Oh god.
I don't know. I've got it here somewhere. I've got like our watch orders and stuff, so I have to see, because Andy watched it in the Netflix order, just the way that it was listed.
No, I didn't watch the way it was listed.
You sure?
Yeah.
Did you like it?
I did.
Cool.
It was fun. It was a good, for sure, a good series. Definitely worth a watch. Giancarlo was awesome, as you would expect. It was a really good one to watch. I will say though, I'm watching that, as I told you guys, the counterpart.
Yes, on Amazon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh well, it was initially on Stars, but now it's on Amazon. Has it now? It's really good.
And that was really J.K. Simmons.
Yes,
J.K. Simmons. Yeah, it's a very interesting
premise.
Yeah, the whole thing. I like it. It's you guys should spend some time.
Another Earth, basically. I love that shit. I love other dimensions. Like if I could meet my other self, like that's...
There was a show a while back with the guy that played Draco Malfoy's dad in Harry Potter. Called Awake.
Okay.
And what it was is he would be in our world, and when he would fall asleep, there'd be a whole other storyline going on. And then he'd wake up. So it wasn't that he was dreaming, he was living 2 separate lives. But when he would fall asleep, he would wake up in the other one, and vice versa.
Love it.
It was cool, and it only made it 1 season, but it was good. Like, it was disappointing that it didn't last longer.
You never slept. That'd be terrible.
It would be terrible.
It'd be terrible. But no, the show Counterpart, like I recommend it for sure. Spend some time. It's really good. Like when we finish this, I'm gonna watch the next episode. It's good. It's good flick.
I need to know if it has an ending. Like that'll actually make a difference to me.
Yes.
If it just drops off at the end because they didn't get a 3rd season or whatever, nope. I might not be able to do it.
All right. Well, then don't start watching yet. I got like 6 episodes left. I'll let you know. If it ends, it ends. But it's a show that should have an ending. Meaning, it's not built for like 7 seasons. It's not built for that. So hopefully, it's just built for 2 seasons and it's done.
What I like is like J.K. Simmons. Like you see his range, right? Because like I before I saw oh my god, I'm the worst with names. But before I saw the movie where he plays that asshole conductor,
Whiplash.
Before I saw Whiplash, I didn't see him as physically imposing or mean or dangerous at all. He's just like this jolly, like, or just kind of like funny, J. Jonah Jameson type guy,
Yeah.
right? But in Whiplash, like you get the you get both in Counterpart. You get like the kind of more kind of soft, jolly one, the kind of like, you know, and then you get like the hardcore, like badass motherfucker. And like it's like, and they're both convincing. And that to me is a genius of J.K. Simmons.
Yeah, no, he plays both very, very well. Especially I'm on season 2 right now, and he's playing both of them, and they're starting to meld together.
Amazing.
And how he's doing it is, I mean, that motherfucker, he can act.
Talented.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is super talented. He's a very talented actor. It's scary, really, how good
I like
he
that he's
is.
one of those guys that's been around for a long time and just kind of finally what would be the end of a lot of people's careers. Like it's almost like he reinvented himself, and now you're getting like these moments where you're like, oh shit, this guy can actually like do things that we didn't know he could do. Because he's been around for a long time. He's done a ton of stuff. And like you said, he's always kind of been that character actor for the longest time, and other stuff. And then you see him doing the things that he just decided to start doing. And it's impressive.
Totally.
So cool. Well, I think we've covered a lot of content, from fucking space aliens to dragons to zombies to everything in between. So we'll put this one to bed. I think next week there's some rumors about at least one new guest on the show, so that'll be interesting. If we make that happen, I think that'll be a lot of fun. You know, unless they get scared, we're a very intimidating bunch. But yeah, that'll be awesome. We'll talk more about The Last of Us because I won't ever stop talking about it anyways, so you guys are fucked. I will try to finish Kaleidoscope so maybe we can get to that. And I think we're going to talk about Velma a little bit, since everybody will probably watch that. That doesn't sound like it's going to be a very kind conversation. I don't know if you posted it or if I just saw it, but it's the worst rated animated series on IMDb history at a 1.3.
Yep.
So that'll be a very interesting conversation.
Third worst overall.
Yeah. So I've seen some shit. I've been watching the 80s Transformers, and I gotta say, that show is not good. But Velma's worse. So yeah. So we'll get to that stuff next week, and we'll definitely have fun. This was a good one. This was a long one with probably one of the most fun tangents in the middle that, like you said, I sure as shit didn't see coming, but I'm glad we did it. So with that, everybody have an awesome week. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, tell your friends, share, and we'll see you next week.
Deuces.
Cheers.
And now, Deep Thoughts by Andy.
Also, just as I was like, because I always sprinkle shit in, like the thing about The Conjuring 2, I'm sorry, dude. Like, I don't care how demonic your voice is. If your voice is a British accent, I'm not scared of your shit. Like, I was just like, I'm good. Like, you're just a goofy fucking British demon. Okay. You know, so like the movie didn't scare me like at all. Like, yeah, there's nothing like it was actually the most underwhelming one. And if anything, it made me want to like learn all their fucking names, so that like that way if they fuck with me, I'll start just dropping names, like hope I get the right one so I can like damn it back to hell, whatever. But I'm still gonna finish them. But I was just like, it's either that or I'm just becoming more like what's that called? Desensitization, like exposure therapy.
Desensitized, yeah.
Yeah, like I feel like because for some reason the first Conjuring and then fucking Annabelle just fucked me up, but this one was just kind of like, but I do think it's the British thing. I'm like, I can't take it. It's like Harry Potter horror. Like I'm good. It's not that scary.